In 1910, a 1,200-year-old ancient Egyptian manuscript that speaks of Jesus' crucifixion story with a lot of apocryphal plot twists resurfaced. Could you imagine Pontius Pilate having dinner with Jesus? How about Jesus having the ability to shapeshift? This text claims exactly that. It used to belong to an Egyptian monastery back in the 10th century, but when it closed down, the writings eventually got lost. Centuries later, in 1910, it showed up, and together with other ancient papers, was purchased by American financier J.P. Morgan and donated to museums. There are currently 2 copies. The first one is on display at the Morgan Library and Museum in New York City, while the other is in the Museum of the University of Pennsylvania. All copies are in poor condition, but the one in New York is said to be a slightly better one. Utrecht University historian Roelof van den Broek, the manuscript's translator, said that it was written by Saint Cyril of Jerusalem, a 4th century bishop, theologian, and saint. Written in the Coptic language, the text says that Judas kissed Jesus for those who came to arrest him because he was known for constantly changing his appearance. Jesus was portrayed as a shapeshifter. It also speaks of Pontius Pilate having dinner with Jesus before his execution, and even offered his son to replace Jesus as a form of sacrifice. In addition to that, it puts Jesus' arrest day on Tuesday rather than Thursday night, a change that contradicts the Easter timeline. According to experts, these events didn't really happen, but it's not a fake. Perhaps some people back in the day believed in it, but in truth, they are nothing more than metaphors. Van der Broek said that even after the Bible was canonized around the 5th century, apocryphal stories like this one by Saint Cyril remained popular among Egyptian Christians. Well, whether or not it's real, these are fascinating accounts, not only for Christians, but also for those who consider the Bible as a captivating piece of literature, and just for the plain curious. I would understand too if many of you don't recall much of Jesus' crucifixion story. So let's do a bit of a rundown and try to compare. The crucifixion story we know from the Bible started when the Sanhedrin, the ancient Jewish court system, accused Jesus of many awful things. The Jewish high priests and elders said that he violated the Sabbath law, threatened to destroy Jewish temples, practiced sorcery, and claimed to be the Messiah. For them, he deserved to die. So, they were looking for a way to arrest him, and they were able to do so with Judas Iscariot's help. Judas Iscariot was an apostle, and yes, he was the one who turned Jesus over to the Sanhedrin, a betrayal story that would stand the test of time. Even today, his name is often used synonymously with treason and betrayal. If you're familiar with the Last Supper, the last mealtime Jesus shared with his apostles in Jerusalem, I'm sure you already know that Jesus knew. He knew that Judas would betray him. While they were eating bread and wine, Jesus predicted that one of them would betray him. Despite his companions' insistence that none of them would ever do that, he continued to reiterate that it was bound to happen. When they asked who it would be, he said, "It is the one to whom I give this piece of bread when I have dipped it in the dish." So he dipped a piece of bread in the dish and handed it over to Judas. He quickly left after Jesus revealed that he was the betrayer and went to the Jewish priests. He offered to betray his master for money. The amount, according to the Gospel of Matthew, was 30 pieces of silver. There are varying accounts, though, as to why he did it. Luke's Gospel says that he was led by Satan. The devil's influence was also mentioned in the Gospel of John. Rather than mere greed, it's the devil that pushed him to do it. Although John made it clear that Judas had always been an immoral man, stating that he stole from the common purse that Jesus and his disciples used. Whatever his motives, his actions resulted in Jesus' death. Judas led the Sanhedrin authorities to the Garden of Gethsemane, where Jesus was praying with the other apostles after the Last Supper. He identified Jesus by kissing him and calling him a rabbi. After the arrest, as per the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus was taken to the home of Caiaphas, the high priest. This is where the scribes and elders gathered together and questioned him. It's noteworthy that another striking event happened here, while Jesus was on trial before the priests. Peter denied knowing him 3 times. Maybe he got scared and panicked. The Gospel of Luke says that in Caiaphas' house, Jesus is ridiculed and beaten. The thing is, they can't just put Jesus to death. They needed Rome to approve the death sentence, so they took him to Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor in Judea. Pontius Pilate was a dictator who was working hard to keep his people happy. He found Jesus not guilty, unable to find or even create a reason to condemn him. Do you know that he even came to Jesus' defense before yielding to the crowds declaring, "Crucify him"? But still, he ordered his execution to please the audiences and maintain peace. Jesus was struck in the head and beaten before his crucifixion. They stripped him naked, placed a crown of thorns on his head, and the rest is Christian history. He was escorted to Golgotha, where he was crucified. There, the crucifixion story we all know. Now, what was so different in St. Cyril's accounts? Did Pontius Pilate really eat dinner with Jesus before he was killed? I know that some would say, yes, why not? After all, Pilate publicly stated that he found no basis to charge and crucify Jesus. He even asked the people if they wanted to free him, which they refused. Instead, they preferred to grant freedom to Barabbas, a notorious murderer, thief, and troublemaker. However, others say that Pilate would never talk to Jesus that way, more so have dinner with him and offer his son as a sacrifice. They say that he was a historical monster, an excessively brutal ruler to the Judeans. Pontius Pilate is actually an intriguing character. Remember that he is not only a biblical personality, he was a historical figure from the Roman Empire. People are so interested in this man, always asking if he was a good guy or a bad guy. Philo Judaeus, a Hellenistic Jewish philosopher, was one of the first people who wrote negative accounts on Pontius Pilate, saying that he ordered executions even without trials. Some viewpoints, however, focus on him being neither good nor bad. He just did his job. He did what the people wanted: crucify Jesus. Now, if he really had dinner with Jesus sometime before the crucifixion, we need to look into the timelines too, like when did that happen? The Gospels may differ in terms of the sequence of events and other details, since they were written by different people with different perspectives, who may or may not have been present at the biblical events. Probably they were able to squeeze in some dinner. Let's now move on to the claim that Jesus can shapeshift. Did Judas really kiss Jesus because he constantly changes his appearance? He is God. Surely he is powerful enough. But did he really shapeshift constantly around this time? There really is no way of knowing. That gesture, as we know from the Bible, was an act of betrayal. Judas kissed Jesus because there were other men at the garden at the time, the other apostles, and he needed to do that to let the Sanhedrin officials know that, hey, this is the man you want. In this new version, however, their purpose was because no one else knew what he would look like at the time. St. Cyril, in his manuscript, says that Jesus could change his age, features, and even species, something that he probably did once in a while. St. Cyril's writings were incomplete, so it's impossible to know how this ability came about. Jesus may have powers, sure, but we know nothing else about that ability. Scholars can deal with the Coptic language translation, but despite that, no researcher has ever read the whole text. Not only are the copies incomplete, they got lost for centuries. Wherever they ended up during that period, they weren't stored properly, hence the poor condition. Unfortunately, we're never going to know what's in the rest of the pages. But for experts, the answer is clear. Jesus couldn't shapeshift, and the writings are all metaphorical. They say that it's normal for ancient religious stories to feature apocryphal details like mystical transformations and magical powers. Interesting, but they were just metaphors. Maybe St. Cyril didn't mean that Jesus could transform literally into some animal, let's say a lion, just that he had the strength or bravery similar to a lion. So, metaphor or real? Maybe it happened. Maybe it's just figurative. It's our job to figure things out from this point. You? What do you think? We already have the final word from historians, but that still doesn't take away the mystery behind this ancient text. Most especially, there are hundreds of pages that cannot be translated and read. We'll end this video here, but feel free to share your thoughts in the comment section. Also, if there are other topics you want us to talk about in the upcoming episodes, I would love to know that too. Whether it's another mystery concerning ancient religious scriptures or not, we are very much open to suggestions. So there, I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you did, please consider hitting the like and subscribe button. If you want to watch more of this, click the notification bell to get notified every time there is a new story. There are new episodes 3 times a week, so make sure you won't miss a single one. See you soon.